Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I've Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
And we are still celebrating Native American Heritage Month for this month. It is November of 2024. If anybody were to, try to timestamp us and figure out where we're coming from the past. Anyway, and for our activists around the world, we are celebrating the works and accomplishments so far of Dr. Nadine Caron. So Dr. Caron was celebrated and has made history as, well, she was kind of the first of a lot of things, it seems. And it's specific to being the first female First Nations general surgeon in Canada. Yes, still a part of America. Not only that, she was the first woman of the First Nations to graduate from the University of British Columbia's medical school. Here's that caveat of yes, we're saying this now, and this is absurd that this is the first for that category in Canada, but there's so many things when it comes to first about whether we're looking at one specific area versus the entire world and all of these things. So we are celebrating her, of course, but no, when it comes to firsts, there's a lot that could be missed. And also sometimes it's a travesty that it's in our lifetime, in our present time, that's the first, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're still going to celebrate it, even with the awe of huh? But yes, so as a part of the Sagamok Anishinaabe First Nations, she has made history in the medical field. And though she's already making waves in the specific field, she's made sure to use her education and work advocating for the marginalized community. She has focused her work addressing issues and inequities in the First Nations communities. And in 2014, she actually helped found the UBC's, or University of British Columbia's, Center for Excellence in Indigenous Health. Here's some information from bcgsc.ca. The Center for Excellence in Indigenous Health was founded, quote, in order to improve recruitment and retention of Indigenous students into health professions, to develop curricula addressing Indigenous health concerns, and to conduct further research into Indigenous health in general. This initiative has resulted in a cultural safety and humility curriculum for UBC students and a graduate certificate in Indigenous public health that equips Indigenous community members and scholars with necessary skills to address public health issues in First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and other Indigenous communities. So her work has been obviously very influenced by her community and her family. So here's a bit about her background from Springer.com, where she was featured as an inspirational woman in surgery. Dr. Caron was born and raised in Kamloops, BC, and one of 4 children born to an Ojibwe mother, a schoolteacher, and an Italian immigrant father, a mason. She completed a degree in kinesiology at Simon Fraser University while playing varsity basketball. Dr. Caron was the first female First Nation person to graduate from UBC Medical School. This was followed by a general surgical residency at UBC, which included a master's in public health from Harvard University, becoming the first female First Nations general surgeon in Canada. And yes, she did indeed play basketball during her college years. In fact, she was a star player who won several awards, including the university's Shroom Gold Medal, which is a big thing for athletes, basketball stars. And she received many more accolades during her school years and even after, including honorary doctorate of laws from the University of Fraser Valley and several others. So she just kind of keeps stacking on her titles. But her time in school was not always easy, especially in the world of medicine. In a 2016 interview she did with CBC, she said, "I think it's a challenging road to go into medicine and to go into surgery. But I think that we've worked hard, particularly at UBC. We started a couple of years ago, the Center for Excellence in Indigenous Health. And one of the things we're doing is exactly that, sort of taking a look at what was hard and how do we fix it for the next generation of students and trainees coming through. And one thing I know that we're doing is trying to make it so that when you are having challenges and you are having difficulties, and you do want someone who can understand, particularly that side of things, being First Nations or being Indigenous or being a minority or having other elements in your life that you're trying to hold on to have someone to turn to have someone to talk to have someone that validates your concerns and your fears, I think is really, really important. In my year, there was no other Indigenous students in the class."
And she continues, "When I saw, particularly firsthand, issues in the healthcare system where it let our First Nations people down, our communities down, That's when it really triggered me. There was no one around that got triggered in the same way, that it touched so personally and so passionately. And I was often told, like, Nadine, you're overreacting, or why does that always trigger you? Why do you always get upset about that? And even as a faculty member and in academia and out in the world there, I often get told that'll never happen. Don't dream so big. It's sort of a message that you'll get repeatedly throughout because there's not too many people that see it through your lens. And like I said, at UBC, which is the world that I'm most affiliated with, they get it and they understand it. And so I'm starting to see a difference now. And then I do look back and realize what I did not have.
Right. And with that, seeing her own culture being a part of the conversation when it comes to health, she also talks about the importance of respecting culture and traditions that many First Nations still practice. She told the CBC, and then there's the traditional healing practice of our Indigenous people in Canada. I fully support that. I think it's important to ensure that when you're working with individual patients, whether it's a disease or in my case, often new diagnosis of cancer, that you're not, when I go to the operating room and I do an operation to take out, say, half of the thyroid or a thyroid because of thyroid cancer, I don't just take the thyroid to the operation. I take the entire person. I take their family, their community, everyone who wants this to be a safe operation, a successful operation. But most importantly, that individual has beliefs, has values, and you have to ensure that all of that is respected so that they can trust you and you can trust that they know what they're going to the operation for and that is safe. And so I completely agree that our First Nations people and our other Aboriginal people in Canada really need to be respected. If this is another area where they turn to for their health and for their treatments, that we need to work with them in collaboration with them just to make sure, what do we propose? How will it fit together? Instead of feeling like we have to choose. So I thought it was really interesting because she talks a lot about that and making sure that they're respecting the culture and understanding the depth of those types of traditions and how important it is in order to be successful for these types of medical procedures. Her successful work has only continued. In 2016, Dr. Caron was awarded $1.25 million from the Genome of British Columbia for the Northern Biobank Initiative. And here's some details from the same bcgsc.ca article. In 2016, Dr. Caron received $1.25 million to address a growing risk that rural and remote communities in BC could be excluded from significant advances made in genomic research and precision medicine. The NBI project includes consultation with the general public, researchers, healthcare providers, staff, and administration, creation of a retrospective Northern BC breast cancer biobank, and consultations with 54 First Nations, including development of the Northern First Nations Biobank Advisory Committee. And that's not the only time that she's been granted so much, like millions of dollars for these types of research. She's been granted a lot of money in working specifically in the Indigenous communities when it comes to cancer treatment. So it's really interesting to see. And in 2020, Dr. Caron was, quote, named the founding First Nations Health Authority Chair in Cancer and Wellness of UBC. This new position, supported by $3 million in funding, was created to improve cancer outcomes and wellness among Indigenous people by examining the stories and needs of Indigenous cancer patients and their families. Her main areas of interest are Indigenous health and Canadian health policies, and this is according to the BC Medical Journal. So in 2022, Dr. Caron was one of 14 people appointed the Order of British Columbia. And in 2024, Dr. Caron is now being inducted to the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame. She is being celebrated for her leadership and work in Indigenous health and surgical practices.
Here's a bit more about her induction from an article from the University of British Columbia Faculty of Medicine. Quote, as a surgical oncologist working in northern British Columbia, Dr. Caron has led groundbreaking projects focused on cancer, personalized medicine, and healthcare services in rural and remote settings. This work addresses stark disparities in health outcomes for Indigenous communities, a driving goal of Dr. Caron's contributions to research, medical education, and clinical care.
Right. And she's quoted in the article saying, quote, I am truly humbled. This is recognition of all those individuals who believed in and supported me with my hopes and dreams, which have really only started and that I will one day pass on. This honor is a symbol of what family, friends, colleagues, and community can do when we all wish for a tomorrow that is better for our children. And obviously, she's only racking up more accolades as she continues her hard work. You could actually find YouTubes of her talking about the disparities in healthcare for Indigenous communities and what it looks like as she is an Indigenous doctor and what that looks like for her and her experiences. So you should definitely look that up. She does have a Wikipedia page. I love when I see that, but they have to update it because they haven't added this induction to the Hall of Fame yet. Just so you know.
Get on that. Get on that. Well, I'm sure we'll check back in. But in the meantime, listeners, if you have any thoughts on this, any resources or any suggestions for future episodes, you can send them our way. You can email us at stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us for now on Twitter at MomStuffPodcast or on Instagram and TikTok for now at Stuff Mom Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christine, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts on iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.